Over the years, the NBA has witnessed countless strategic evolution, zones versus man-to-man, pick-and-roll innovations, and the modern emphasis on three-pointers. Yet few developments have been as peculiar or controversial as Hack-a-Shaq, the practice of deliberately fouling a poor free-throw shooter to disrupt an offense. While the tactic took its nickname from Shaquille O'Neal, one of basketball's most dominant big men but also among the worst from the foul line, the broader phenomenon of intentional fouling has influenced how coaches manage late-game situations, shaped league rules, and even sparked debates about the sport's entertainment value. When a strategy so blatantly turned the game into a parade of free-throw attempts, fans and executives alike questioned whether it was in basketball's best interest, leading to a quiet revolution in how such tactics are regulated. To grasp the roots of Hack-a-Shaq, one must travel back to the 1990s. Shaquille O'Neal entered the NBA in 1992 with the Orlando Magic, instantly becoming a force of nature in the paint. At over 7 feet tall and weighing more than 300 pounds, Shaq overwhelmed defenders with his strength and athleticism, prompting opponents to foul him before he could dunk or lay the ball in. When O'Neal moved on to the Los Angeles Lakers, continuing to dominate around the rim, teams discovered that if he had trouble making free throws, often shooting in the 40 to 50% range, why not take advantage of it systematically? That led to a strategy. Whenever the ball touched Shaq's hand, or sometimes even before it did, defenders would deliberately foul him, forcing him to the stripe rather than risk letting him score in the low post. This effectively turned each of his possessions into, at best, 1 point, if he could convert on half his free throws. Some coaches from earlier eras had already experimented with intentionally fouling poor shooters. The Detroit Pistons, for instance, occasionally targeted Dennis Rodman's or other big men's free throw weaknesses in the 1980s and early 1990s. But Shaq's stark disparity between unstoppable post scoring and subpar foul shooting made him the perfect target. When famed coach Don Nelson first used the approach in a game against O'Neal's Orlando Magic, the media dubbed it Hack-a-Shaq. The moniker stuck, and soon it evolved into a recognized, if divisive, method for neutralizing dominant inside presences. As the Lakers soared under head coach Phil Jackson, powered by Kobe Bryant and Shaq's inside-out game, the Hack-a-Shaq tactic became both common and polarizing. Proponents argued that it was a legitimate chess move. If a superstar had a glaring weakness, why not exploit it within the rules? Coaches like Greg Popovich or Rick Carlisle were often lauded for their willingness to send Shaq or other poor shooters, such as Chris Dudley, DeAndre Jordan, or later Dwight Howard, to the line repeatedly. On the other hand, critics contended that it slowed the game to a crawl, ruined the flow of competition, and bored viewers with endless free throws. For a league that prided itself on dynamic, high-scoring action, Hack-a-Shaq was an unwelcome grind. Shaq himself voiced frustration, at times turning up extra hours in practice to fix his stroke, but rarely seeing significant improvement. Throughout the early 2000s, he often joked about the tactic, but clearly despised it. Fans in LA roared when he occasionally went 2 for 2, a moral victory in a sport where 70 to 80% is a common free throw target for other positions. Shaq's coaches made lineup adjustments. Either they subbed him out in close late-game scenarios or braced for the foul barrage. Yet, ironically, his teams often prevailed anyway, since the Lakers and later the Miami Heat won championships despite Shaq's free throw woes. Sometimes, the Hack-a-Shaq just prolonged the inevitable if the rest of the roster was strong enough. As the tactic spread, more big men with suspect foul shooting found themselves targeted. Dwight Howard famously confronted a version of Hack-a-Howard, putting him in the line of fire anytime coaches smelled an opportunity to mount a comeback or disrupt the opposing offense. DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond, and others became frequent victims, leading to spectacle-like sequences where entire quarters might devolve into repeated whistles and visits to the line. While it made sense strategically, fans and TV networks grew increasingly vocal about the negative viewing experience. Games extended for an extra 30 minutes of free throws, momentum vanished, the sport's aesthetic appeal took a hit. League executives and team owners gradually recognized the potential damage to the NBA's entertainment value. Yet for a while, the rules remained unchanged. After all, the logic was that if a player wants to avoid the tactic, he can learn to shoot free throws better. Many basketball purists argued, make your fouls, or pay the price, insisting it upheld the principle of fundamental skill. Opponents, however, pointed to the boredom factor and insisted the league had a responsibility to maintain a watchable product. Eventually, the NBA started tweaking the rules around intentional fouls, particularly in the final 2 minutes of each quarter. Under the existing guideline, such fouls could be penalized with free throws plus possession if deemed away from the play. Over time, officials grew more vigilant in calling away from the ball fouls, discouraging blatant grabs or holds of a player who didn't have the ball. While these incremental changes didn't eliminate Hack-a-Shaq entirely, they curtailed some of the extremes, such as defenders wrapping up a big man as soon as the clock started. Despite those rule adjustments, versions of the tactic persist today. Coaches remain willing to send a poor foul shooter to the line if it offers a strategic edge, especially in the playoffs, where one or two missed points can swing a series. The strategy has also highlighted how vital a single skill, free throw shooting, can be in championship aspiration. For some big men, the fear of becoming the next Hack-a-Shaq victim has driven them to refine their stroke, while others accept it as a cost of doing business. In a broader sense, Hack-a-Shaq and the overall phenomenon of deliberate fouling reflect the constant tension between tactics and spectacle in pro sports. Even the shot clock, introduced decades earlier, aimed to reduce stalling and keep action brisk. But as soon as teams find a legal exploit, they use it, forcing the league to reconsider whether to adjust the rules. This dynamic has fueled discussions about how to keep basketball as entertaining as possible without penalizing legitimate strategy. The slow shift in officiating demonstrates a league capable of adaptation, though seldom as swiftly as impatient audiences might demand. Meanwhile, Shaquille O'Neal's entire legacy remains intertwined with Hack-a-Shaq. While the big man overcame it to win titles and become one of the game's all-time great centers, the strategy stands as a testament to the unpredictability of basketball's one weakness. Opponents, lacking any better means to handle Shaq near the rim, used the foul line as an equalizing weapon. Shaq himself joked that his free throw misses gave the haters something to talk about. Decades later, though, this approach has shaped rosters, forced skill development, and stirred conversations at every level of the sport, from youth leagues to the NBA, about the ethics and enjoyment of intentionally halting the game. Ultimately, the story of Hack-a-Shaq is about more than a single player's flaw. It's about how coaches can exploit loopholes, how leagues respond to protect the game's integrity and excitement, and how star players must adapt or watch a key weakness overshadow their strengths. While the practice may never fully vanish, its controversial presence has spurred rule changes, endless debates, and lasting memories of a lumbering giant stepping up to the foul line time and time again, all while the scoreboard and fan opinions hung in the balance.